It's sort of crazy. Elon Musk has Twitter, and he thinks that he is the decider of everything. And so what does he do? I mean, because there's nothing more scientific than a Twitter poll. And now that he owns Twitter, he decides to put to a poll whether or not a $1.7 trillion bill should pass both the Senate and then subsequently the United States House of Representatives. Musk, though, went on Twitter, found that the Twitter poll that he did, he asked people, and we can look at it here, should Congress approve the $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill? Well, 71% of the people said no, and 28 or 29% of them said yes. So obviously, Cenk, my whole life, and this goes back to, the early days of, the presidents of my lifetime, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, always went to Twitter to see what the people thought of a bill, because that's the way it worked. So lo and behold, Elon saw that it didn't work. He goes back on, and he thought that that should influence the majority leader of the United States Senate. He wrote at Senator Schumer, at Leader McConnell, this poll should influence you. And he said, the public has spoken. They are overwhelmingly against this giant spending bill, as if somehow at that point, that's the way the Senate should go. Cenk?
Well, there's a couple of issues here, and then we'll get to the bill itself. But first of all, okay, let's acknowledge all the obvious things that's wrong with a Twitter poll. As Michael mentioned already, obviously unscientific. Anyone who doesn't know that, especially someone like Elon Musk, who claims to be a great engineer, I suppose he is, but who knows anymore, right? She knows how deeply unscientific it is. Second of all, there's bots, so anybody can rig that poll. Third of all, non-Americans can vote on it. Fourth of all, it's a Twitter poll. Are you kidding me? Okay, but the second issue is.
But can I add one thing? The people that follow Elon Musk, one would presume, are overwhelmingly supportive of Elon Musk, who is overwhelmingly not supportive of this legislation. So again, I mean, we don't have to make other arguments for why this is foolish, but again, it's worth pointing that out as well.
By the way, so that's true, and there's two other giant problems with this insane Twitter poll. But the other day I did a poll on, because we've got Turks and Jerks coming up. That's at the end of the year. We do a special. It'll be next Thursday after the Young Turks at 8 o'clock Eastern. Turk of the Year, Jerk of the Year. We have a bunch of candidates, and we basically pick the hero of the year and the jerk. And recently on Twitter I did a poll. Who should it be, Elon Musk or Joe Manchin? And look, I will not abide by the results of the Twitter poll, just like Elon Musk. He says he abides, but then never does. But it turned out that Elon Musk won. So then, well, that's scientific. It's over. It's over.
Right,
Elon Musk is the worst person in the world.
Can I ask you an aside question here? I was there at the genesis of Turk and Jerk when we used to do it of the day or of the week at some point. And Ben and I were passionate that it should have been spelled J-U-R-K, like T-U-R-K and J-U-R-K. Has that ever been brought in, or is it still
It's been brought up many times and rejected over and over again. But
put it to a poll. Put it to a damn poll.
We got to put it to a Twitter poll, because Twitter polls decide everything. Exactly. But the one thing we can't change at all, apparently, well, you'll have to see it in the special if it's true or not. But Elon Musk, the jerk of the year, because it was in a Twitter poll. Twitter polls never lie. The fact that it's people that are following me and likely to find Elon Musk a jerk, obviously not relevant. Okay.
Not at all.
Yeah. So now Elon, I don't know if he's that stupid. Like, there's some chance that he is. Like, he thinks these things are real. There's some chance, of course, that he doesn't. But is there any chance that anyone who voted in that poll has actually read the bill, including Elon Musk? No, of course not. They have no earthly idea what's in the bill. That's going to lead me to my second issue, which is that, yeah, maybe they should reject the bill, but not because of this.
In fairness, nobody who's voting on the bill in real life, not Twitter, has read the entirety of the bill either. I mean, you have committee members, and those committee members, or the people on the committees, have staff, and those staff members report back to their bosses on Capitol Hill and the Senate. Of course, senators will have some of their special interests that they look at to see whether or not they should support or not support it. But at the same time, this is the kind of thing where certainly the people on Twitter haven't read it, and certainly none of the people that are voting on it have read the entirety of it. It's about 4,000 pages, so that can be expected. But they are certainly more knowledgeable about what's in the meat and potatoes of a spending bill as it pertains to their states, their districts, or their special interests that they hold at heart. So that's where they have a leg up on Elon.
Yeah, it's such a dumb poll. Is 1.7 trillion too much? How would you know? How do you know it's not supposed to be 1.5 or 1.9? What would you cut? What would you keep? Would you cut defense? Would you cut subsidies to Tesla? What would you cut? Right?
The real poll is 45 billion too much, Elon?
Yeah, well, that's not a poll, Michael. You don't need a poll on that one. The 44 billion that he paid for Twitter, definitely too much. Yeah. But look, the final part of this is that, look, they're gonna pass it. You're gonna tell us about it because it always passes. But the reality is, even if that 71% were true, Congress wouldn't give a damn. That's not how bills are made. They don't care about public policy and what the public thinks at all. They care about what their donors want, and that's what that bill is. If Elon made that point in a more interesting and sophisticated way, then I'd be all in. But this is just about the dumbest way you could make that point.
Yeah, no question. Although I will say in a spending bill like this, it's not just it's just as cynical, but it's not only about the donors. It is about being reelected. So it's about bringing pork back to your district if you're in Congress to have some kind of legislation that says, oh, this guy did this or this woman did this. I'm going to vote for them next time. So it's not only about the money. In this case, in a spending bill, it's about getting reelected with the votes. The money will help you later on, but certainly this is about appealing to people who are going to remember things that you did. Let's get to it. It was a bill that had to pass the U.S. Senate first and then would be pushed on to the U.S. House. The U.S. House saw that bill pass the Senate today. They will be voting on it tomorrow. And these bills typically are everything that's good and everything that's bad about Congress. When I say everything that's good, this keeps the country going. This keeps the military going if you're into that sort of stuff. But it's good for local economies that house the military. And so in that essence, and the people that supply the military. But it's also good for it also brings up a lot of issues and pushes back on things like Title 42. We'll get to that as well. But it also has things like Patrick Leahy, head of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. Well, it turns out this bill has 4 things being named after Patrick Leahy. It has 1 thing being named after Richard Shelby. The FBI building in Alabama will be the Richard Shelby FBI building. He is the minority on that. He's the ranking member on appropriations. Mike Lee, the senator from Utah, when he heard that Richard Shelby was going to be getting something named after him in Alabama, said, I'm surprised there's still something that wasn't named after him in Alabama. So it's a lot of that. A lot of the things that make us cynical about politics, which is always what you see in a bill, but there is some meat and potatoes here. This bill it's about government funding expiring now at midnight, and we'll look at we can bring up graphic number 3 and what Mike Lee tried to do. He tried to put in a poison pill to stop this, to trying to sneak something in on Title 42, as I alluded to. With government funding set to expire at midnight Friday, senators failed to reach a deal Wednesday night to advance the $1.7 trillion omnibus spending package that passed today, as Democrats push back against Mike Lee's last-ditch effort to stop or to extend Title 42. Title 42 is a CDC title that kept people, because of COVID, rendered them unable to cross the border. It's sort of a COVID stipulation that is set to expire. So, Cenk, this is a big part of it. It got to a vote in the Senate, but it was turned aside. It's important the way it happened.
Yeah, so let me add last 2 things here. One is, Michael's right. You need to pass some omnibus bill. You can't just shut the government down, and the government does essential things. So don't believe the hype from right wingers who say that the government does nothing. Unfortunately, it is laden with pork and it is laden with goodies for back home and for donors. So if you could cut that out, that would be awesome. But neither side really wants to do that at all. But also in terms of the Mike Lee effort, so the way that would have worked is the progressives. There's enough progressives, believe it or not, in the House that they could have blocked this bill if it had a poison pill in it like Title 42. Title 42 says we should not allow any immigrants in, even if they're seeking asylum and their lives are in danger, et cetera, basically. And apparently there are good enough Democrats in the House that insisted that not be in. So it would have killed the whole bill, and that's what Mike Lee was trying to do. But interestingly, he wanted an exception for the filibuster. Now, these are the same Republicans who were like, no exceptions to the filibuster. But as soon as he wanted this to pass, he said, wow, you got to give me an exception to the filibuster. Which leads me to my last point about how, hey, look at that. Maybe Democrats do some decent things every once in a while. When Mike Lee asked for it, I got nervous because I don't have a lot of faith in Joe Biden and Democratic leadership. And I thought there's some chance that they would give him an exception to the filibuster because they secretly wanted to keep Title 42 because they're worried about immigration issues and a lot of people crossing the border, and that Biden was gonna go knee-jerk conservative. So the way he was gonna allow that to happen is go, oh, golly gee, I guess there was nothing we could do. We made an exception to the filibuster and just got in there. But you know what? Credit to Biden and Democratic leadership. They didn't do that. They said, no, if we have to deal with a filibuster, you have to deal with a filibuster. And that's why it lost Senator Lee's proposal, and the overall bill passed without it.
And John Thune, the senator from South Dakota, is the minority whip in the Senate, said as much. He said, this is what happens when you control the Senate, and this is why we didn't get our way, and this is why this poison pill was averted. Well, what they consider a poison pill on the other side was averted. So you do have to look at the leadership having been able to maneuver this. And again, this is something that happens in the U.S. Senate every couple of years. You have to keep the government going. But there were some things in this bill that are worth pointing out. There is $45 billion in aid to Ukraine. There was an overhaul of the electoral counting law that makes it much more difficult to overturn a presidential election, a certified presidential election in Congress. There is money that was put aside as well for prosecutions of January 6th of the accused on January 6th. So there's a lot that went into this that I think was supported by Democrats across the board and is going to be something that's very difficult for Republicans to vote against. Some of them have said that they're going to do it in the House.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.